Smithfield Town Council, June 15th, 2020 is called order.
I just want to
First
hear.
item is
It's the
prayer and a
council.
pledge.
I
Madam
just want to
Clerk?
Lord, assist with thy Holy Spirit of counsel all those who are serving in positions of authority and responsibility. I cannot stand, but
It's okay.
allegiance to the flag
Of the United States
United States
of America,
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Here.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Present.
Mr. Rozier?
Here.
Mr. Zelinski?
Present.
Mr. Vadney?
Here. Just before we go into the open forum, which is next, I'm going to just remind everybody that's out there, if you haven't been recognized, to please keep yourself muted so we're not hearing your conversations or your background conversations. It would be very helpful because it confuses everyone else that's listening right now. With that, the open forum pursuant to Public Law 42-46-6D with a maximum of 15 minutes. Is there anyone out there wishing to address the council under the open forum?
I do.
Mr. Clifford,
Mike Clifford, 489 Black Plain Road.
let me just see if there's anyone else, Mike. Ms. Scott, is there anyone else?
Peg Vada?
Looking?
Peg Vada would like to speak.
Okay. And that's it?
No.
Mark Caderet.
Mark Kederet?
There anyone else wishing to speak under the open forum? That's what you've got so far?
That's all I have. I have Mike
Three
Clifford,
names?
Peg Vada, and Mark Kederet.
Okay. Mr. Clifford,
Thank you. I'd like to address the discussion that was held at the last council meeting regarding the bond money and the demolition costs, decommissioning funds that were supposed to be set aside for Hallowell. I heard statements that were true made by both parties. I mean, I heard somebody say that originally that bond was supposed to have $400,000 for decommissioning. And that is what I recall seeing in the documents that were approved by the town council at the time. However, that was modified by the council, I believe, on January 30th, 2018, at a special council meeting when you approved the stage 2 application submitted by Superintendent St. Jean. It very clearly in that document indicated that $3 million would be spent, $4 million would be spent. And it also, on one of the documents that was provided in the stage 2 application, which the town council approved that evening, it delineated the cost of decommissioning and identified it as $300,000. It was on a page entitled Preliminary Project Budget, and it was on the bottom of page 1, and it very clearly states $300,000 decommissioning. So I think you know, whatever the intent of the original budget was, the council in January of 2018, in my mind, modified that amount and reduced it to $300,000. I believe Mr. Lombardi in this case is actually correct. I did hear the discussion of, you know, the need for the town to have that money so that they could have a feasibility study done. I want to point out that at the time that that bond was passed by the voters, anybody who attended any of the public hearings or read any of the newspaper reports on the issue, it was very clear that those buildings, with the exception of 2 that Superintendent Lindbergh had preserved, those buildings were supposed to be demolished.
This says you couldn't transfer someone to me this morning.
I don't know who's talking, but
I had one veteran that
there was no discussion of having a study done to see what to do with the buildings. They were to be demolished. As far as the school department leaving it in a mess, I'm assuming that they just thought the wrecking ball would be there and the crane would come and pick up all the debris that was in there. I probably would have removed some of the stuff on my own from those classrooms. But the question is, you know, what was communicated to them? Were they told that it was going to be wrecked and not to worry about it, or were they told what to take out and, how to, in what condition to leave it? leave the building in. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for the town's position here. I actually seem to agree with Mr. Lombardi. I also would like to point out that the only thing that was supposed to be done, or actually was demolishing the buildings, but the discussion also was held at the time of the possibility of removing the hazardous materials from the building, having that done professionally, and then using the fire department, either the state fire marshal's office or the local fire department, throughout the country. If you Google, controlled fires by fire departments, you'll see that they use empty vacant buildings as a practice drill on how to control the fire once it's started and initiated. And I can think of no better place than the site of Hollowell to do that. It's isolated, it's safe, removed from the other properties in the area, and in its own little world down there. So, we're all saying, oh, it's going to cost $1 million. I'm not a believer that it's going to cost $1 million. And if you wanted to try to do it more economically, you probably could. I do find a bit of a irony here where, both the town and the school department are begging for this money and putting up their arguments as to why they need it more. And that should speak volumes to everybody. The last thing we need to do is renovate another building that we don't have funds to maintain again. That's down the road. Right now, the plan initially, if we could stick to the plan that was approved by the voters, was demolish the buildings except for those two. And if the superintendent didn't at the time choose to use them for storage, as he said he was, then they too were going to be demolished. We were told it was going to cost $12 million to remodel those buildings and make them habitable as a school. So why we think it would cost anything less, it's going to cost more to retrofit them into a different purpose than the building that they were designed to do. But the other thing I'd like to hear later in the meeting is if you could give your update on the municipal building task force. Could we get an update when you provide the update to the council? Could you mention what the discussion was the other night at the meeting regarding Bushy School? What's the status of Bushy School? So I think that's my arguments. I'm sure the school department, by the way, I heard $60,000 to clean up the mess that was left over there. And I would be very surprised if the school department wouldn't offer to go over there and clean it up with their own in-house staff, and it wouldn't cost $60,000. But I think the money is, Mr. Lombardi is right. It was $300,000 that was agreed to. And as far as the cleanup, let them go over and clean it up if you have a problem. But I question why wasn't that communicated when the building was initially vacated. You don't wait a year later and then start complaining about it. In my world, anyway. Thank you. I guess that's it.
Mrs. Vada?
Hi, I'm with my neighbor, Mark. I'll let Mark speak first.
Mark J. Cataract, 430 Buxton Street, Slatersville.
Could you speak a little louder? We can hear you.
It's Mark J. Cataract at 430 Buxton Street, Slatersville. What else? Oh, we were concerned about the compost farm, or whatever they call it, the compost. I don't know what to say.
This is new to him, so.
Yeah, this is very new to me. I'm just sick and tired of the wretched smell we have through the neighborhood. I don't
You've
know.
lived here all your life.
Oh,
So, all right, I'll speak, Mark. Just Peg Vada, 440 Buxton Street. So I've been working with quite a few of the neighbors, Mark also being one of them. Mark, born and raised here in North Smithfield at the same house where he lives right now. When he will tell you, and by all means, I'm sure he'd be happy to have a one-on-one with any of you, but this town council is one thing, town council on Zoom is a whole nother thing altogether. But in his recollection, all that ever was there were woods. If this were a residential farm and they were composting items that were grown on that residential farm, as the paperwork actually specifies needs to happen, I don't think anybody in this neighborhood would have a problem with it. We understand that cows smell. These aren't cows. The problem for us is that they are trying to do a commercial enterprise on a residentially zoned property, and it is not acceptable here. So we really hope that you will consider and discuss very carefully the litigation. We feel like North Smithfield has a very, very good case to be able to fight this. And I've actually done the Freedom of Information request and got all of the paperwork. I'm happy to share with all of you, although you probably have access to yours as well. But it's pretty clear to me that some corners were cut at DEM and that they don't have any right to be running the kind of enterprise that they're running on Buxton Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Just as a little bit of an update to you, Peg, and to Mark, is that this is an item that's on our agenda for discussion and closed, and we potentially will take action in open session. So just to give you an
Thank you.
update. Anyone else out there, Ms. Scott, looking to speak under the open forum?
I have unmuted all the landlines in case someone missed it and wanted to speak up. They can speak up now.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak under the open forum? Is this person wishing to speak? 301-1459, are you wishing to address the council?
I guess not.
Okay. Next item, executive session, closed session, discussion by council vote or other action, Rhode Island General Law 42-46-5A2, sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, or work sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, potential litigation and or litigation, notice of violation, appeal, Buxton Hollow, 300 Buxton Street, North Smithfield, Rhode Island, Plat 1, Lot 35. Is there a motion to move into executive?
So moved, Mr. President.
Motion by Mrs. Zelinski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. O'Hara. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Rozier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadney?
Yes.
All right. Give me a moment to put everybody